It's a heavy snake. What does it weigh, about 50, 60 pounds?
She weighs about, yeah, she weighs
If you love classic TV, you already know that Johnny Carson is the longest-running late-night talk show host ever. For 30 years, he showed up in living rooms 5 nights a week with sharp jokes, surprising moments, and a style no one else has been able to copy. From the unplanned slip-ups to the strangest on-air surprises, we're counting down the top 10 most unforgettable Johnny Carson moments. Number 1. The snake incident. Joan Embery was already famous for her work with animals when she appeared on The Tonight Show. She had handled all kinds of creatures on live TV, elephants, monkeys, you name it. But this time, she showed up with a huge Burmese python, and suddenly, all eyes were on Johnny Carson instead. At first, Carson was cautious. He had hosted many animals before, but there's something about a snake that makes even the calmest person pause. As Embery guided the python toward him, the tension in the studio grew. Then, in a classic moment of live television magic, the snake ended up draped around Carson's neck. What made the scene unforgettable wasn't fear, it was Carson's reaction. He tried to maintain his usual composed demeanor, but the audience could see the mix of hesitation, amusement, and genuine panic on his face. He shifted in his seat, moved his hands carefully, and occasionally froze, unsure how to handle the slithering guest. Yet, he never lost his sense of humor. The python itself was surprisingly calm, adding to the comedy. Carson leaned into the moment, making jokes, reacting to its movements, and letting the audience enjoy every second. People in the studio laughed not only at the snake, but at Carson's very human, very relatable reaction to a situation he didn't fully control. This moment became a recurring highlight whenever Joan Embery appeared with animals. It perfectly captured Carson's charm: professional, patient, and willing to embrace the unexpected. It also showed why the show worked so well live. Anything could happen, and the host's genuine response was part of the entertainment. The snake incident remains iconic because it combined suspense, humor, and Carson's natural personality. It's a perfect example of why viewers loved watching The Tonight Show. You never knew what might happen next, and when it did, Johnny was always ready to turn it into a moment of laughter. And he did turn a fight into laughter. Number 2. The whipped cream fight. Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise were frequent guests on The Tonight Show and good friends of Johnny Carson. They were known for joking around, and whenever they appeared, especially to talk about movies like The Cannonball Run, they brought lots of energy, silliness, and fun to the show. One night, the usual joking turned into full-blown mayhem. What started as a bit of friendly teasing quickly escalated into a whipped cream fight. Bottles and cans flew, and before long, the entire set was covered, and so were the participants. Carson, who initially tried to maintain order, soon found himself in the thick of it. He ended up with whipped cream on his suit, his desk, and even his hair, laughing as hard as anyone in the studio. The audience went wild. It wasn't just the mess, it was the joy, the spontaneity, and the sight of Carson letting go of his usual composure. For a host known for timing and control, this was a rare moment of pure, unscripted fun. It showed that he could roll with whatever happened, letting the guests take over and trusting that comedy would follow naturally. The moment became legendary for several reasons. It highlighted the chemistry between Carson, Reynolds, and DeLuise, a trio whose friendship and humor were infectious. It also reminded viewers that live TV could surprise them, that even the host could be part of the joke. Years later, people still talk about the whipped cream fight as one of the most memorable, messy, and hilarious bits in The Tonight Show history. Carson's laughter, Reynolds' charm, and DeLuise's mischievous energy combined into a perfect storm of comedy, proving that sometimes the best moments on television happen when the rules are thrown out the window and everyone gets a little messy in the process. But what happens when improvisational comedy steps in? Number 3. Robin Williams, uncontrollable improv. Robin Williams was a force of nature in improvisational comedy. His lightning-fast mind made his appearance on Carson's show feel like an event you couldn't miss. The moment he opened his mouth, the entire studio seemed to shift. Williams exploded from one joke to the next, slipping into new voices and characters as if he couldn't contain the energy inside him. Johnny Carson, usually calm and in control, had a rare reaction. He laughed as no one had ever seen. He gasped for air, wiped tears from his eyes, and even slammed his desk at times, completely overtaken by Williams's energy. He didn't try to stop him or rein him in. He leaned into it, instead letting the jokes and characters flow, reacting with pure delight to whatever Williams threw at him next. At times, Carson seemed to admit defeat. He would lean back, smile, and mutter something like, "I've lost control of my own show," acknowledging that Williams had taken over in the best possible way. The audience loved it, and the show became as much about Carson's laughter as Williams's comedy. Rather than being a one-time spectacle, Williams returned multiple times, appearing 9 times in total, each visit bringing the same unpredictable, high-energy magic. He even appeared on Carson's penultimate episode with Bette Midler in May 1992, proving that their chemistry was timeless. Yet, another timeless bit was an awkward magic routine. Number 4. Steve Martin and his absurdist magic routine. Steve Martin was a master of unpredictable comedy, and whenever he walked onto The Tonight Show, he carried a brand new kind of humor with him. But on this particular night, he took it even further. He announced he would perform a magic act, and Carson, always the generous host, stepped back and let him take the spotlight. What followed was unlike anything the audience had seen. Martin, calling himself the Great Flydini, pretended to unzip his fly and pull out a series of completely ridiculous objects: eggs, a salt shaker, a ringing telephone, and even a tiny hand that waved at the audience. The comedy wasn't in the items themselves, but in Martin's deadpan delivery, treating each bizarre prop with total seriousness. Carson's reaction made the moment unforgettable. He started as the straight man, nodding politely, but as the routine grew more absurd, you could see him genuinely losing control. He laughed, doubled over, trying to keep his composure, while Martin continued unfazed. Writers and producers later said it was rare to see Johnny surprised and entertained like this. He wasn't just performing laughter, he was reacting like a regular audience member, caught off guard by the creativity and commitment of the bit. The audience roared with delight, but there was no interruption, just pure amusement. Carson, who had a background in magic himself, appreciated the skill and timing behind Martin's absurd physical comedy. The performance became one of the most memorable moments in the show's history, showing how perfectly Martin's chaotic style could play off Carson's calm, professional presence. But just one comment nearly beat their chaotic style. Number 5. Dolly Parton's infamous comment. Dolly Parton was one of Nashville's biggest stars, a country girl known for her stunning voice, her heartfelt songs, and yes, her famously voluptuous figure. When she came on the show, she was ready for a friendly interview, and Johnny Carson met her with his usual playful charm. Their conversation began light and teasing, the kind of warm, witty banter that had become a signature of the show. Then came the comment that would go down in history. Looking at her low-cut outfit, Carson said, "I'd give a year of my life to peek under that blouse." The audience gasped and laughed at the same time. Dolly, ever graceful, laughed along, handling it like a true professional. Backstage, people remembered the control room holding its breath. No one quite knew how live TV would react. At the time, it was a bold, direct remark, unusual even for Carson. Some viewers found it refreshingly honest. Others thought it crossed a line. Dolly herself wasn't offended. She later said she took it as a compliment. In fact, she and Johnny had built a rapport where teasing about her figure was part of their charm. She even joked during the interview, "I appreciate you keeping me hot," realizing mid-sentence the double meaning, and then laughed it off. Over the years, their friendship grew beyond the playful jokes. She wrote a song for him, visited him before his retirement, and showed genuine affection and respect. Their connection was built on humor, trust, and shared history, not just the surface-level gags. This moment stood out not only for the laughter it generated, but also for what it revealed about changing standards on television. What had been acceptable humor then would be viewed differently now. Yet Dolly and Johnny handled it with warmth, charm, and professionalism. Despite his warmth and charm, a song drove him to tears. Number 6. Bette Midler's farewell song. After 3 decades on the air, Carson's final show arrived on May 21, 1992, and Bette Midler appeared to honor him. She chose the deeply emotional "One for My Baby" and "One More for the Road," and gently reshaped the lyrics into a heartfelt farewell, thanking Johnny for all the years of laughter and the legacy he was leaving behind. As she sang, the audience was quiet, captivated, but it was Carson who stole the scene. Normally calm, usually unflappable, he sat mesmerized, eyes glistening with tears. It was rare to see him so moved, watching every note and word, feeling the weight of the moment. The lyrics, "For all of the years, for the laughs, for the tears, for the class that you showed, make it one for my baby, and one more for the road," hung in the air, personal and heartfelt, like a love letter to the man who had hosted generations of late-night viewers. After the song, Midler placed a Hawaiian lei around Carson's neck, a simple but powerful gesture of affection and gratitude. Overcome with emotion, she quickly ran off stage, leaving him sitting there, still holding the moment, still absorbing the connection. Earlier in the show, they had shared a brief duet of "Here's That Rainy Day," another one of Carson's favorites, which had already shown the special bond they shared. It was just real, a mix of music, emotion, and respect that perfectly captured the end of an era. Midler's tribute became one of the most iconic moments in television history, a tender farewell to a legendary host. Watching Carson's reaction reminded viewers why he mattered, why 3 decades of laughter had made him unforgettable, and why some moments on live TV stay with you forever. Still, a Tomahawk disaster left its mark too. Number 7. Ed Ames' Tomahawk Disaster. Ed Ames, who played Mingo on Daniel Boone, came on the show in April 1965 to show off his tomahawk throwing skills. It was supposed to be a simple demonstration. Ames explained the technique carefully. Carson watched, and a wooden cowboy silhouette was set up as the target. Then Ames threw the tomahawk perfectly, but it landed right in the cowboy's crotch. The audience exploded in laughter. Carson, usually composed, completely lost it. Backstage, people said he doubled over, tears rolling down his face, and couldn't speak for what felt like minutes. 3 full minutes of laughter on live TV, which is practically an eternity. When he finally caught his breath, Carson nailed a joke. "I didn't even know you were Jewish," and then, "Welcome to Frontier Briss." Ames tried to get another turn, but Carson wouldn't let him. "I can't hurt him any worse than you did," he said, and the audience roared even more. Carson recognized the magic in the moment and let it breathe, letting the laughter build naturally. The segment showed why Carson was a master. He didn't just react, he elevated the moment, turning Ames's mistake into one of television's most legendary comedy bits. The audience laughed not only at the mishap, but at Carson's quick thinking and ability to play along. It was a simple setup, a quick accident, and an improvised performance, but it has lived on in TV history. Years later, people still quote the jokes, laugh at the image, and remember Carson laughing harder than anyone else in the room. It was one of those rare moments where everything came together: a celebrity, a mishap, a brilliant host, and pure, unplanned comedy gold. But then, another legend became a highlight. Number 8. Bob Hope Bombs. Bob Hope was one of the greats, a legend in comedy who had made audiences laugh for decades on radio, film, and TV. Back in the day, having him on the show was a highlight. By the 1980s, though, things had changed. Hope was older, in his late 70s and early 80s, and his act had started to feel stiff. He would arrive with cards in hand, reading jokes that felt recycled golf, politics, and old punchlines. The audience was polite, but you could tell they weren't connecting like they used to. Johnny Carson, a master of timing and charm, handled it with grace. He introduced Hope warmly and treated him with respect, never letting his irritation show. Backstage, though, those who worked on the show said Johnny would mutter things like, "Hope doesn't listen, he just talks." A rare moment of honesty about a comedian he deeply admired. The most awkward nights were when Hope tried to tackle current events, but the jokes landed flat. Johnny's smile would tighten, and he'd loosen his tie, glance at Ed, and keep going. It was like watching a great athlete in the twilight of his career. You respect him, but it's painful to see him not at his best. Still, audiences loved it. Seeing two generations of comedy share the stage was magical, even with the tension underneath. Carson understood that comedy evolves, and he treated Bob Hope with great public respect, allowing the old legend to shine even as he quietly recognized the growing distance between their eras. But while Carson honored one veteran star, another guest surprised him in a completely different way, revealing a depth of love for his dog that caught Johnny completely off guard. Number 9. The poem Too Deep to Forget. One of the most touching moments in Johnny Carson's long career came in 1981, when actor Jimmy Stewart visited The Tonight Show. Stewart had been on the show many times, and viewers loved his calm, gentle way of speaking. He and Carson always had a warm connection, with Stewart's slow, thoughtful style balancing Carson's smooth hosting. That night, Stewart mentioned he had written a poem about his dog, Bo, who had recently passed away. Carson invited him to read it, probably thinking it would be a sweet, light story about a pet. Instead, Stewart delivered something far deeper. As he read the poem, it started simple, almost playful, but as he continued, the emotions grew stronger: love, loyalty, and the quiet pain of losing a companion. Lines like, "Sometimes I reach out my hand to pet him, but he's not there," filled the studio with a heavy silence. By the time Stewart finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The cameras then turned to Johnny Carson. For someone known for always keeping his cool, the moment was stunning. His eyes were filled with tears. He didn't try to crack a joke or quickly change the subject. He didn't hide the emotion at all. Instead, he sat quietly, letting the moment breathe. A director later said, "That was the real Johnny. He wasn't acting for TV, he was truly moved." Ed McMahon, Carson's longtime partner on the show, was also emotional. Later, he joked that the two of them had become maudlin mutt mourners, but in the moment, everyone felt the same grief and love Stewart was expressing. What made this moment unforgettable was its honesty. Late-night TV was usually full of jokes and light talk, but that night, viewers saw two American icons share a simple truth about love and loss. And that raw human moment became one of the most unforgettable in Carson's 30-year run. But nothing prepared the audience or Johnny for what happened next, when another guest shattered his carefully kept composure in a way no one saw coming. Number 10. The comic insult. Don Rickles was famous for teasing everyone who sat near him, and his fearless jokes became a big part of late-night TV. But one moment stands above all the others: the night Johnny Carson marched across the NBC studios to confront Rickles on live television. It became one of the funniest, most unexpected scenes ever caught on camera. The whole thing started on December 13th, 1976. Carson wasn't hosting that night, so Bob Newhart stepped in. Rickles was the guest, and as usual, he was fooling around, using Carson's desk as a prop in his act. While joking and moving things around, he accidentally broke a wooden cigarette box that had been on Carson's desk for years. It wasn't just a desk trinket, it was something Carson really cared about. The next evening, Carson returned to the show and immediately noticed the broken box. He was upset and wanted to know who was responsible. Band leader Doc Severinsen wasted no time pointing the finger at Rickles. Carson didn't let it go. Right in the middle of his show, he picked up the broken box, grabbed a microphone, and told the camera crew to follow him. Together, they walked across the NBC lot to the studio where Rickles was filming his sitcom, C.P.O. Sharkey. In front of a shocked cast and audience, Carson burst onto the set and stopped the taping. He held up the box and shouted, "Someone broke my cigarette box!" Rickles, completely caught off guard, tried to joke his way out of it, but he was clearly stunned. Carson kept teasing him, turning the moment into a live mini-roast right on Rickles' own stage. Because it was totally unplanned, totally real, and incredibly funny, this moment is still remembered as one of the greatest unscripted scenes in late-night television history. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.